What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod. Another week of pop culture with Pat Sheehan and my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, hot man, real hot.
Hot Girl Summer 2.0. Emphasis on the hot.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
man.
uh, it's sweaty. We're starting to get into the warm days. Pop culture slowly warming up as well. We had a packed show last week. If you didn't check that out, you can go listen at youtube.com/nostalgiapod or soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod. And we have a little more cleaning up to do this week. We were playing a little bit of catch up. So we have a couple of older things that came out less than a week ago, we'll say, that we're
Right.
going to be talking about, as well as some things that came out just today. But before we start, I just wanted to check in with you. We talked about Olivia Rodrigo last week and how she was crushing the charts, and then pretty much right after that BTS just came in and was like, oh yeah, we're gonna drop Butter, and then that's gonna go number one again. What are your thoughts on that?
Uh yeah, I wasn't expecting a new BTS single so soon. I was like, these dudes are allowed to relax just a tad,
Yeah,
one
are
would
they?
think. Apparently not. Yeah, I like the song. It's very much the Dynamite mold, another
Hmm.
English track. You notice on the writing credits you have lots of the usual like label suspects. RM is credited as well, which is nice to see. But also the actual like label boss of Big Hit has a credit, which is very strange to me. But I like the song. I think it's and it doesn't matter to me that it's made by committee because it's still really catchy. Those guys are talented dudes, and yeah, to debut at number one in the US, like it's almost another level reached again for BTS in terms of Western, not just acceptance, but domination at this point.
Yeah, they are just absolutely unstoppable. The only thing that could stop the Rodriguez was the BTS. What are they? The BTS Army?
BTS
What are
Army, yes, don't get on their bad side.
Yeah, no, we're fans of BTS, so don't come after us. Hit that like and subscribe. But we're gonna stay in K-pop to start the show off here because we had a EP drop. Don't fight the feeling from EXO dropping today, and only 5 tracks. Um, and EXO, similar to a couple of the other K-pop groups we've been talking about. I guess similar to all of them, a lot of members. All taking their turns, all getting their moments to shine, trying to have a very diverse sound, but still kind of in that K-pop mold. What'd you think of "Don't Fight the Feeling"?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about lots of SM entertainment acts at this point. All of Just about all of their major hitters have done something at this point. We did Shiny, Wavy, NCT Dream, and now we have EXO. And as you said, EXO, lots of members. I believe they're at uh, 9 right now,
Mhm.
originally 12. They're effectively NCT before NCT came out, and then NCT like took that to the extreme because there's like a fuck ton of people in NCT, as we all know. Um, and I actually thought this was kind of interesting because the way it was being talked about was that it's the first EXO group work since their last full length album in November 2019. And yet, if you look between November 2019 and today, there's a few subunits of EXO, again, NCT vibes there, but also like solo work. Five of the guys in EXO have released solo material. And like, I think about half of them have done their military service, with the last of them recently having started it. So I think they're kind of an interesting example of like a K-pop act that has been around a long time, debuting in I believe 2012, and now they're very much like into like that second or third act, whatever it is, because like you're operating post the fabled military service that can often be, or used to be, more of a final grace note for K-pop. So
Mhm.
listening to this, even though a few of the members still didn't record on this because they were actively doing their military service. Funny enough, the guys that just started it secretly recorded for this before they started their service. A lot to keep track of, but it didn't sound like anything was amiss to me. But I'm not the biggest EXO fan, so I think that those hardcore EXO fans are probably really excited for the next full length group once
Hmm.
everyone is totally out of military obligations and they can really
Sure.
all be together as one. But for like a holdover thing, a special album as it's being called, I think it still kind of does what it needs to do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think for I would guess I know the tracks on this that pop for you and I, and I think there's two real standouts for me, and then a couple that are a little more toned down and not necessarily my speed. But I really like the title track. I think that like growling bass line throughout the whole thing is like a really nice like way to like kind of hold the track down. Then they bring in like the danciness around the chorus, which I
Mhm.
thought was really fun. And then No Matter really stood out to me. Just felt like a really groovy track. You know, they're doing like a fast singing, potentially
Yeah,
like a rapping. You know, obviously not knowing the language, it's kind of hard to tell like the cadence of things, but just the way that the words sound, it's like this rapping
yeah.
cadence, which I thought worked really well on the track. What track stood out to you?
Yeah, I thought No Matter was interesting. I think the beat really stood out to me, and in general, the first track, Don't Fight the Feeling, I really like that bounciness of
Mhm.
that EDM beat, the breakdown on the hook where you can hear a lot of the members all singing together. I thought that sounded really good. But in general, that's a K-pop banger,
Right.
and I feel like a lot of like the EPs I'm talking about, like the wavy one, the shiny one, there was like a really clear standout, like well done banger on all of these
Hmm.
releases. So SM seems to have a playbook they've been doing. Later on, just like on this EP, there are some slower ballad songs.
Yeah.
More the guys getting into their bag vocally, and I think that's it depends if that's what you want to hear from them. I'm always more in tune to the banger stuff from K-pop, but in a sense, like everything else, like just like NCT Dream, which we just talked about recently, it's attempting to do a lot of different sounds, or at least a lot of different
Mhm.
types of songs, in a short runtime, which is always cool. Like I've always kind of impressed with the ambition a lot of these K-pop
Yeah.
releases have had of late.
Yeah, especially because even though they're, doing, they're trying to make a very eclectic release, whatever it is, an EP or an LP. Um, a lot of it's really competent, even if it's not necessarily like super interesting to you and I
Mhm.
when things are a little slower. We, like I was saying, I think we both kind of prefer the bangers from K-pop, but yeah, I mean, it all still sounds pretty good, even if it's not necessarily our cup of tea. Any last thoughts on XO, or do you want to
Y-
hop over to the rap?
Yeah, well, I just had one last note when just looking up, more stuff about EXO lately. I was familiar with Baekhyun and Kai because they both were members of Super M, of course. And I did not know this until today, but Baekhyun's second EP, Delight, Delight, yes, was the first Korean solo release to sell 1 million copies in Korea since
Hmm.
2001, which is like a crazy stat. Because like when I think of like soloists in K-pop, like even if Baekhyun's like the biggest and the most accomplished of the EXO guys, like I would think of some I don't know like G Dragon or something. Like there's other names I would have thought of first, but then I guess reading into it more, apparently Korean music, like albums in general, would not go platinum at all until like only about 5 years ago or something. So it's kind of interesting to see like how even over in Korea, where the music is obviously dominated for decades, like the commercial viability of it still has really increased of late, and obviously
Yeah.
we know how much more global the music has gotten much more recently. So uh always interesting to check in on stuff like this.
Yeah, for sure. And I've really been enjoying how we've been diving into this. Definitely, obviously a sound that just continues to grow in popularity. So, why don't we move over though to two kind of popular rappers? You know, it's funny because this release that we're going to talk about, the voices of the heroes, did pretty well this first week. Sold,
200,000 tracking right now.
yeah, it's crazy, and this is a much better drop than Lil Durk or Lil Baby have had on their own. So there's potentially something there in terms of numbers, but this wasn't a album I had initially planned on listening to, but Dave, I really trust you to lead me in the right direction with these rappers that I'm trying to keep up with. And this wasn't necessarily an album I was super thrilled with after listening to it. Uh, Tell me about Lil Baby and Lil Durk. What intrigued you about this album?
Yeah, it's not so much that I was intrigued. It was more so just that Little Baby and Little Dirk have never been more popular than they are at this very moment. And obviously we've talked about both of them in passing because they've just been featured at nauseum, right? Little Baby made a lot of noise last year with My Turn, an
Mhm.
album I thought was really hit or miss, but definitely had some highs. Like I think his best song probably ever is Emotionally Scarred off that. And of course, We Paid is a great banger off the deluxe with 42 Doug. And then Dirk, probably even more surprising because Dirk has been rapping probably more than twice as long as Little Baby has. Like he's more popular now and he's like been like actively like well known nationally for I don't know 9 years almost. Like it's been a
Mhm.
long time for Lil Durk, and now he's the hottest, second hottest artist in Chicago alongside Polo G. It's quite the come up, you know. Like if you told me, like I'm like I think just the introduction for many people outside Chicago was way back. You know, I was like, oh, if you like Chief Keef and Chicago drill, check
Yeah.
out these artists like Fredo Santana and Little
Mhm.
Reese and Little Durk. And it's like, huh. I remember the time I was not very thrilled with Little Durk, you know, and looking back, I guess his use of autotune, his kind of melodic trappy ways was a little bit ahead of the curve in
Mhm.
2012, to be honest. But to think that he's leagues bound more famous and popular than Chief Keef is today, it's a crazy thing. I never would have thought it would have happened at the time. Um, and his album, we didn't talk about his last album because it came out on Christmas Eve last year, so that's kind of a
Tough
non-starter
time
for
for us. Yeah.
for us to review something. Um, and it was his most successful project to date. And I think the song "Still Trapping" with the late King Von, one of his close friends, is a highlight there. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a victory lap album. But I was surprised to actually see it so soon. Little Baby and Little Dirk just kind of putting something together and throwing it out there, and you can tell by the tracking it's being well received, well consumed anyway. But yeah, I mean, my criticisms of both of them as artists kind of have just flowed into this collab album with them. I don't think this really should change anyone's opinion, whether they're positive or negative. I think it just kind of does more of what those guys do, which is to me kind of generic trap. And
Yeah.
I think Little Baby in particular, he kind of falls into like a monotonous delivery at times. At least Dirk seems to have like more energy in his vocals. That stands out to me a little bit more, but there's so many tracks too. It's like so many of them are just in
Mhm.
one ear out the other. It's I think it's I think even the biggest fans probably just like you take the songs you like off this and you don't think about the other ones ever again. Really.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the thing is when we decided we were gonna listen to this, I clicked onto it. I was like, oh, let's see, probably like 20 minutes, maybe 25, get like a nice short album. No, this is now an hour. I was like, okay, we're doing it. Um and it's uh, I wouldn't say this is like a necessarily bad. It's just I think a little bit redundant, a little bit uninteresting. Um, I think the moments I really liked were songs that were much more like either relying on that like heavy bass kind of like trap sound, or that were like upbeat and kind of like in that mold of Chance, kind of
Mhm.
like uh when it was uh, I don't know. There's some songs that I could never not tell you the difference for you because it's just like the same production, same
Yeah,
tricks over and over, and
I think
kind of blends together.
the beats in general are quite lackluster to me, which is kind of surprising. Like you would think
Mhm.
Quality Control and whoever Dirk signed to would be like Universal. I think. You think they'd be more invested in a budget here? Like,
Mhm.
apart from I think the How It Feel beat stood out to me for kind of reminded me of a How It Feels reminded me of like a xylophone. Like I don't know, just kind of a
Yep.
unique cadence to that beat. But other than that, like nothing really stood out to me. And I think these are guys that really need strong production too, because lyrically they're not ambitious. and which is so funny to me because all the love Little Baby got last year is like so many people are talking about his bars. And like, yeah, both of them, Dirk and Baby, they rap like they put words together. They're
Yeah.
not mumble rappers, you know, like they are competent at rapping. But like I
Mhm.
saw a lot of people like really trumpeting like their lyricism, and like I just never could get there. Like even the bigger picture, multiple Grammy nominations, performed it at the Grammys. Listen to the actual words of the song, and it's just a both sides protest song. There's no substance to it. And again, I don't need Little Baby to give me substance. I'll listen to Yes Indeed and Emotionally Scarred all the time. And I guess there's substance to that one, but like this, like you would think, like I wish there was something that like even banged a little bit more. Like there's nothing close to We Paid on this, you know. Like it's just
No.
it's just generic, which is unfortunate. But it's kind of how I feel about a lot of lower effort comes across anyway Atlanta stuff. You know, it's just not that, doesn't feel special to me.
Yeah. It doesn't feel special, but you do get some big um guest verses on this or some moments. Any of those stand out? Any of those add anything for you?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Rod Wave shows up at the end. He's still sad, in case you didn't know. Um, I'd say Travis on Hats Off probably stood out to me the most because it was
Yeah.
more old school, early Travis style of performance from him. That also had, I think, one of the more funny lines for me from Little Baby. Dirk the voice, he know what to say. I'm the hero. I come save the day. I was just wondering, like, where did like the voice and hero nicknames come from for these two dudes, which I believe they bestowed on themselves because you would think the guy who made the bigger picture would call himself the voice. And Little Dirk, one of his biggest songs ever, one of his my favorite songs of his is called Neighborhood Hero. But no, they cross these paths. I guess whatever, man. It ain't that deep.
Um, well, my understanding of the nicknames is that they somehow come from childhood, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like Dirk says, the voice is a childhood nickname. I don't know if that's true,
If
but
you say so.
sure. Yeah, overall pretty forgettable. I agree. Travis is probably my favorite feature. Yeah. Uh, I guess "Hats Off" might be the track we put on the playlist.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe.
I'll still be checking for what they're doing just because the guys are so hot right now, you know. But I mean, just personally to me, like I know Little Baby, people love Little Baby. He's so many people's favorite rapper right now. But like when I compare him to other similar artists like Travis or Uzi, Thug, like he's just so much Migos. Like he just doesn't come close to the highs of those artists for me. Um, but other people he does. So good for them. They're very successful at this time.
Also, we got that Migos single last week.
Album this Friday. Very excited.
Here we go.
And Polo G's
Um,
second album as well. So the King Chicago title run for Dirk, short lived, if you ask me.
Big stuff happening this weekend in the rap world. So we're looking forward to next week's pod talking music. But we're going to move on to Netflix and a comedy special, sticking, I guess, with music in some way. Bo Burnham dropping his first comedy special in, is this like
5
his first
years.
ever recorded one like this, though?
I think he had two for Netflix, and a few others were more of the comedy album variety. He's had a
Mm,
lot at this point.
yeah.
I didn't actually realize how long he had been famous. He was a YouTuber as a teenager. Like,
Yeah. To late 2000s was when he really like started to gain a lot of popularity. Obviously his style is musical comedy, but mixing in stand up and observation in there, obviously. And um inside the new special, it comes at an interesting time for him. He's been delving a lot more into serious acting. Obviously we saw him in Promising Young Woman.
mhm.
We were fans of Eighth Grade, even though it was incredibly cringe, as the
Right.
kids would say. And
He was also recently cast as Larry Bird in the upcoming
yeah,
HBO Showtime Lakers show. So that
Adam
sounds
McKay,
cool.
can't
Yeah.
wait. And he's actually a really good casting. He's super tall, and he's
Yeah.
got that like look for Larry Bird. So great casting there. And we've also consumed some of his directing of comedy specials.
That's
We
right.
talked about Tambourine from Chris Rock. I don't know if we talked about Gerard Carmichael's 8, but I know we both
I like that
liked it.
special a lot though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the great Gerard Carmichael, very underrated.
And Bo's camera, I believe that was the first one he did. His camera actually kind of stands out. He kind of like loops around
Yep.
Gerard the whole time. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of like, again, like we don't talk about a whole lot of stand up, but like when someone has elevated, branched out, blossomed beyond strictly the stand up world, such as Bo Burnham has for several years at this point, gets my attention for when the stand up special does come back around. So here we are, and
Yeah.
definitely unique, right? Given that
Mhm.
the obvious stuff of it all, written, edited, shot, acted, produced solely by him,
In one
um,
room.
over the course of a few months in his home in Los Angeles. Uh, at the end, that speaks for itself, right? It's a product of quarantine. I think actually, I think this probably would have hit even, I think, a bigger deal if this had managed to come out at some point in 2020. Obviously, this
Yeah.
is a very tough thing to pull off. Watching him in the beginning, like working on his lighting and stuff, I'm like, I feel you there, man. I know exactly what that's like, trying to adequately light oneself in a fucking bedroom. It sucks.
Right.
Uh,
Um,
but yeah, here it is. Came out last Sunday.
yeah, and for me, I think watching this and not being a huge Bo Burnham fan, I would say I'm aware of some of his like earlier stuff, but not like to a point where I would call myself a fan. Was pretty blown away by this. Not only because I think some of the songs are really poignant in different ways, and obviously speak to a whole myriad of issues that we're all currently dealing with. But I think uh, the way that this comedy special seemed to like transcend a bit of what you would come to expect of a comedy special, and it felt a lot more cinematic, obviously, and just to do what he did with the little that he had, like you said, just recording in a home, doing his own stuff, really impressive. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, that's I think should stand out to everyone. It's just it comes across as formless.
Mhm.
There's a lot of editing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
cutting, right? It's not just multiple shots of a guy holding or woman holding a mic on a stage. It's
Mhm.
therefore, I think, more visually interesting. Like the lighting, a lot of stark, bright neon lighting changes, shadows, non-shadows, all kinds of cool stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it kind of borders on like sketch, right? Like some of the more memorable bits, like the one where he's being like a Twitch streamer,
Mhm.
and then also acting out the action of the game he's
Yep.
streaming, right? Like that's something that is different from anything you get from a comedy special, right? That's obviously much more aligned with something like Saturday Night Live. So
Mhm.
I think that's the coolest thing, is even if it's like not every joke is like amazing, and like the ambition and the uniqueness of Inside, I think, is what will make it stand the test of time when it comes to comedy specials. It's not the funniest thing you ever saw.
Yeah, and when this came out, uh, pretty quickly I started seeing like clips and screen grabs from this all over. The Saki bit obviously
Mhm.
was getting a lot of attention. I think not only because it's a really well thought out and I think a really smart critique of the way history is told and
Hmm.
framed to people, and then also like the I think the difficulty people have in breaking those cycles of how we talk about and reflect on history. Um, but I think it's also one of those things that is a little more easy to post, and people get it when you just have a screen grab of Bo Burnham with a sock rather than him lying on his floor like my background is, or like you're showing like this
Right.
visual of him as a silhouette. It's very artistic at times, but I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what bits or what songs stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so I like the sock one. That one was really cool. I like the Twitch one. Just, I
Yeah.
think, visually really cool, right? Just seeing him act out like a narrative adventure um storytelling game. Really funny. Um,
Yeah.
Similarly, the reactions video, like the YouTuber bit, where then he's
Yeah.
reacting to himself, reacting to himself, reacting.
Mhm.
Like that was awesome. Um, I also liked one about sexting.
Oh, it's
But
not sex, it's the next best thing.
yeah, specifically the focus on emojis. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
Similar to the hand puppet one, you had the bit about like woke brands, like companies
Mhm.
that feel the need to align with a cause. Even though, again, it's more of a sketch than strictly a joke, it still has that kind of observational humor and point of view that you'd expect from like smart stand up. So that. I think those are my favorite ones. I forget what it was. I'd have to rewatch it, but there was one of the earlier tunes towards the beginning of the special, and the melody reminded me a lot of like Lin Manuel Miranda, Hamilton kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Like, I was like, oh, this feels inspired to me, and
Yeah.
like I know he's done music. Music's a big part of his comedy to this point, but I actually think it was really smart to use it as kind of the driving force for so much of Inside, because again, he had so little other thing other options right beyond just literally recording himself telling jokes directly looking into the lens, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think not only those skits that you highlighted stood out to me. I think the sexting one was probably the one that made me laugh the most.
Hmm.
But I think the skits that were really like uh, vulnerable. Like he talks pretty openly about having anxiety, some of his mental health struggles, the way the pandemic has been impacting him. I thought the FaceTiming with mom one was pretty memorable and something that probably a lot of people relate to over the last year. I really enjoyed the song "All Eyes on Me." I thought that was a interesting like second half tune, and
Hmm.
um, then the one where he was talking about the internet, I thought also was one that probably is gonna get a lot of attention. People are gonna really take to. Um, yeah, the thing is, like, I kind of go through it, and there's not a lot of moments where I was like, "Oh, that was bad." Like, I think there's some things I liked more or less, but overall, really, really impressed with this. One thing I did see was a bit of a debate online about like the ending and what it really meant. Like, how did you interpret like the very end of the special?
Oh,
Where you
I don't
like,
know. I don't know, to
yeah.
be honest. I didn't realize that was a hotly contested thing, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of transitions throughout this special. It's quite formless, and I think actually that's one of the benefits of, even if you don't like a certain bit or joke as much as the next one, it's
Mhm.
always still pretty visually interesting, or at least visually different than something you had recently watched already within the special. So it always keeps your attention. And yeah, like the ending, like I don't know, it's up for interpretation, I guess.
Yeah, it was mostly people just interpreting it all differently, and I thought that was a nice part of it. He finally gets to like leave the house, and then immediately wants to get back in and can't, and just makes you think. So, not your typical stand up special, and I think that's why we both would recommend checking out Inside Out from Burnham. Um, why don't we stay though on Netflix and just hop over to our guy Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan
Oh,
McGregor.
hello there.
Yeah. Playing Halston, the Shar White created series on Netflix, 5 episodes. Love it. Give me those 5 episodes. Um, I I would say I have a season pass to Ewan McGregor at this point. Like anything he does, I'm usually like, I'll check this out.
Right.
Um,
Do you have a
and I
season
think,
pass to Ryan Murphy? Because there were two sides of the coin with Host in the limited
yeah,
series.
it's a great point, Dave, because Ryan Murphy is someone I actively try to avoid if possible. Although I say that, and I did watch the prom, and I didn't have to for this.
Me
So
too.
yeah,
I watch
just
stuff that people tell me is bad from him all the time. Even Halston. It had middling reviews, but I was like, huh, only 5 episodes, and it stars Ewan McGregor. All right, I'll check it out at least. If this
yeah,
was a full 10 and it wasn't Ewan, I probably wouldn't have went through with it.
yeah,
Um,
and
I definitely like this more than Ratchet, though. We can say that right off the bat. Ratchet
yeah,
quickly lost my attention, and Halston. I think there's some key differences from a lot of his recent Ryan Murphy's recent Netflix productions. But
mhm.
I mean, how'd you feel about it?
I thought it was really up and down, with some really excellent moments and episodes, and some episodes that were really forgettable and unmemorable. I think when they lean into the dramatics of the fashion world and like the competition and kind of like the rise and fall of the business, I was really interested. when they move into Halston's personal life, I think it runs into some issues, and is pretty one note a lot of the time. Um, and which is it almost feels a bit like they wasted Ewan McGregor with a not so well written script. But I don't know. Before we started kind of breaking down the specific moments, what did you think of Halston as a whole?
Yeah, I felt similarly. At the end of the day, it felt very down the middle, which is not what I
Hmm.
usually expect from Ryan Murphy. Like it's visually bland, it's straightforward plotting. It's felt like Wikipedia summaries of
Right.
Halston. We're very quickly moving through his career and his we're just told about his notoriety and his rapid, almost viral success.
Hmm.
Post making Jackie Kennedy's hat. Right? It's like everything's kind of felt yada yada, and then once we get to like actually in the moment with Halston as like a in demand fashion artist creator, we again move quite quickly. And I didn't love Ewan in this either. Like he had like the mannerisms intentionally. He had a distinct voice, but he also kind of felt like he was a little bit coasting. And maybe that's a product of the script as well, like you said.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was quite disappointed in how like just straightforward it was. You would think like this story, the Halston story, is very ripe for a biopic film treatment from like a serious director. Like there's definitely room, and I'm sure someone will revisit this down the road. But like as a limited series, you think, oh well, there's tons of stuff to get into with Halston's life. We'll get into it, but like barely. Like everything's just on the surface throughout the show, which is disappointing.
Yeah, I almost wonder, and we are not usually people who are advocating for things to be longer or more necessarily, but it almost feels like it could have done well with an episode or two more to just like give it some room to breathe and explore. But like you said, we pretty much see start off with Halston as a child, seeing some of the issues that his family had, specifically a lot of domestic violence in the home, and then it's like, oh, you're a very successful designer because you designed this hat for Jackie Kennedy. But kind of the yada yada that I felt like was an interesting
Hmm.
decision, like very something that would have been a great grab for people. I feel
Yeah,
like,
the come up is
yeah,
completely skipped.
kind of crazy. And they focus more on him, establishing himself as this like mega brand and like selling out, I guess, in some way, and like
Hmm.
grappling with like what it means to like have success as a designer and success as a you know I don't know, thought or as a
Hmm.
concept within that world. But um yeah, it felt very like the rise and fall of every powerful person who gets addicted to cocaine kind of story in the long run, which is
Yeah.
disappointing because I feel like there's a lot more there.
Sure, and I mean, Ryan Murphy is always quite intentional with LGBTQ stories as a gay man, right? Like he's very much like one of the most important producers when it comes to this stuff, right? Creating stuff like Pose, for example.
Yep.
But like, there's just not enough time, I think, to adequately tell that story. I mean, again, think about when this is taking place, what life was like for someone who was kind of an out gay man, not totally, right? Like
Mhm.
yeah, and I mean, Halston died of AIDS, right? Again, we could have had more with that too. Like again, I think this is ripe for a really good biopic one day. Um, but ultimately, I think like the whole like selling out angle is the funniest bit about this. When I saw this comparison online a lot, Halston's downfall as a designer is due to brand dilution, due to a
Mhm.
ill-fated but lucrative deal with J.C. Penney's, and it's awfully funny to think about brand dilution in the sense of Ryan Murphy. Much like Halston, Ryan Murphy's name on a
Yeah.
TV or movie does not mean a whole lot anymore. Now, does it? Because A, he makes a ton of shit, and he also just does not have a high hit rate anymore.
No.
Just a funny meta angle to think about this kind of thing.
It's a really good point. I didn't actually connect that, but that's really clever. I like that. Um, I for me, I do want to focus on some of the moments I liked a lot. I liked the Versailles fashion off, which was kind of
Episode
posed
two.
as like his like the climax of his career, so to speak, when he like upstaged all the other really famous designers. Um, leading to like the mega deal after that. But or maybe I already had it before then.
No, I don't think so. This was like that. I think that was definitely like a big victory for him and
yeah,
established him like not just as like a popular designer, but also as like a well respected one by other people in the fashion circles. And
right,
like leads him to, I believe, Bill Pullman's the businessman figure gets
right,
involved in the story around that time. Yeah, I like that one. That was cool. Like the whole like they're in the shitty room, got to whip something up together. Like and like
yeah,
it's a little surface level, but you see like the frenetic genius of a designer like Halston just kind of whipping up something to win the championship, as it were.
totally. And like it's just the way that it's shot, where it's like this like very snooty, atmosphere until Halston comes out, and then it feels very modern. Obviously, you have Liza Minnelli played by Krista Rodriguez, like
Hmm.
as a running uh, character through this, and a real friend in Halston's life. Um, I also really liked the episode where they go to Studio 54, and obviously that's kind of like the boogie nights, like everybody's on cocaine, like leading leading up to like the obviously the downfall of the second half boogie nights, but just feels very like fun and partyish. And I was like, Studio 54 feels like there's a lot there to explore. I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of things made about Studio 54,
Hmm.
but um, I don't feel like there could be something there for a revival. But other than those two episodes, I watched this a couple weeks ago now. It feels like not that much has really stuck with me. In terms of other moments, any others that stood out to you?
You mentioned Liza Minnelli character in the film. I thought that performance was, or the series. I think that performance was good. Like obviously, you get like the song and dance classic Liza Minnelli thing early on, but I like that presence in general. I did not know Joel Schumacher crossed paths with Halston. That kind of made my eyebrow raise. Rory Culkin plays him in the
Yeah,
series. Joel Schumacher, of course, goes on to become the famous film director, of course, who recently passed. Yeah, it's not like an offensive series by any means at all. I was just a little frustrated with how inert it felt because you can definitely tell
mm,
there's like room for so much more and something much greater
yeah,
in terms of telling the story. But alas, doesn't get there, unfortunately.
yeah. They like have these moments where they kind of like something will go wrong in Halston's adult life, and it'll flash back to something that happened in his childhood, and they are pretty explicit, like, oh, this is why he has these issues, but he never really like necessarily comes to terms with them. I feel like there's never like a moment where he like reckons and like totally acknowledges, like, yeah, I have these bad relational patterns, and like I should do something about it. Maybe that was actually how the real Halston was, that he never had this moment. I think you kind of see in the last couple episodes, like when Victor is trying to get back with him, and he kind of sets that boundary, like, no, I can't be with you anymore, type of thing. But I wish they had just explored that a little bit more in depth, rather than just being like, oh, he was a troubled person because he went through this. Like, I guess I wanted a little more there. I also feel like the AIDS pandemic epidemic was not. I don't want to say yada yada, because I don't know if that's necessarily true. They definitely spent some time on it, but it just felt like, again, like you mentioned, everything was kind of surface level. Like you see some of the fear and some of the panic, but it's all kind of like just to a certain depth, and they didn't really want to explore that more, which felt like there's probably a lot more there to explore. Especially, there was that show on HBO we talked about recently. I'm blanking on the name, that really delve into this topic, and um, it's hard to like juxtapose those two. I'm frustrated
Yeah,
that I'm
what
blanking on the
fuck?
name.
What are you talking? What was that?
Why can't I think of
Oh,
it?
it's a sin.
Yes, it's a sin.
Yes,
Thank
the
you.
UK show.
Yeah, seeing like the two times kind of juxtaposed against each other, and the way that one really focused on that, obviously that being the central story, and this one just kind of being like, yeah, this is what killed him and pretty much all of his friends. Just really felt, yeah, like they just didn't want to, like you said, it was very down the middle, didn't want to go there. So overall, just fine, worth a couple hours, but maybe not the best thing you can watch. Why don't we move on to Undina, Christian Petzold's newest film? And Dave, I know that you watched Petzold's film before this. Give me a little recap of that one.
Yeah, so Christian Petzold is a well-known, long storied career German film director, and hadn't seen anything he had made until his 2019 film Transit, which I believe is still available on Prime right now. And Transit notably also stars Franz Rogowski and Paula Bear, who are the stars of Undine. And that movie, I think, is tremendous. I absolutely recommend it. One of those movies, like I caught, like I knew people liked it all year, didn't really catch it till like the holiday break time of the
Mhm.
year, but really good because it's a really cool story. Honestly, like it's about people trying to escape the Nazis and like the other two characters kind of crossing paths. Like it's not a there's no war, there's no battle scene. It's not a war movie. It's a drama with like that kind of backdrop of people trying to flee the city and end up getting stuck in Marseille. And really interesting, really good script. And Rogowski in particular, I think, really stands out in terms of like just characters meeting and passing in the night and whether they want to uh, stick together or stick out for themselves kind of thing. So I definitely recommend Transit. And I was really excited to see Undina, him making another movie so soon. I know this debuted at the Berlin Film Festival back in 2020, which I believe was the last film festival to like take place in the before times. And Paula Bear actually won the uh, Best Actress award at the festival that year. So I was excited to see this. We finally got it here in the U.S. on VOD. It had come out in Germany last June, a year ago, and definitely does not hold a candle to Transit to me. I was quite underwhelmed with Undine. Unfortunately, it's I guess a theme of his filmography, from what I understand, is that vagueness comes into play often, but to me, with Undina, the storytelling just doesn't quite gel altogether. Like I think there's a lot of like cool pieces to this film, but I don't know if it like transcends. And I thought Transit really got to a high level by the end at the end, like you're really wrapped, and I don't know if I was as engaged with this story this time around.
Yeah, Undina for me, I think the parts I respected and definitely was most engaged with was just the chemistry between Paula Beer and Franz Rogowski. I think their romance really uh, thrives off the fact that those two as actors seem to just have a lot of on-screen chemistry, and it kind of crackles when they have their real emotional moments.
Hmm.
Um, I think where things were pretty tough, it was obviously it's just like a dark fantasy if you needed to put a label onto the genre, and that fantasy aspect, like you mentioned, is kind of put in there in such a interpretive and vague way. And especially I think the second half of the story really left me trying to grapple with what Petzold wanted me to take away from this film, and I ultimately left feeling a little bit confused. So I think we're kind of on the same page that the vagueness of this didn't necessarily um, work as well this time. You- I also gotta say, Rogowski looks just like Paul Mescal to me.
Mystical.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, like the same facial
Yeah,
structure,
he
pretty
also
much.
became a sex symbol in Germany. Funny enough,
Not
much like how
surprised.
mezcal has exploded in the past year. That's funny, funny comp.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned before we started recording that this is based on a story of the same name, like a myth of the same name. Is that right?
Yeah, like not something I'm super aware, but like Undina in Europe is a female like sea nymph, and like the whole it's kind of the whole very similar to the I guess the key like overhanging on the plot of the film is that this water nymph becomes human when she falls in love with a man, but is doomed to die or something bad will happen if that man is unfaithful to her. So like in the very beginning of this movie, Undina says that she would have to kill her soon to be
Johans.
ex-boyfriend
Yeah.
Johannes if he like leaves her, right?
Mhm.
And like you don't I think you don't know going in, like, am I supposed to take that literally? And I think
Right.
that's kind of an issue with the film is by the end of the movie, I still don't really know if I'm supposed to take all this literally
Hmm.
because it doesn't fully commit to like the fantastical elements. Like going into this, like just knowing this the broad strokes, I actually thought like she was gonna like look like a mermaid at one point or something. That does not
Yeah,
happen
same.
at all, honestly, you know?
Nope.
And I think the story of like Undina not actually getting over the past relationship when she's in this new relationship that she's happy with, obviously highlighted by that scene on like the bridge or like the walkway by the water where she has to look back at
Mhm.
her ex-boyfriend when she walks by him
Johannes.
down the path,
Mhm.
right? Like maybe if we didn't have the trappings of the fantastical elements, it might have felt like a tighter story. I don't know. Um, I think the key to like this movie working for someone is they have to be invested in that relationship between Christoph and Undina, and
Mhm.
definitely the acting is definitely up the chops. Like they have great
Yep.
chemistry, so you have to be invested in that relationship. I think because otherwise, like there's just some vagaries to it, man. You know, like and sometimes it's really nice to look at. Like I think the scenes like where you're watching the train move, like he's chasing
Yep.
her on the platform before she goes away. Like some good moments, but like plotting wise, it was a little hard for me to invest in.
Yeah, it's really also tied into the idea of like Berlin's structural building history. And
Yes.
there's a lot of like lecture of that, which at
Mhm.
times is pretty fascinating,
Yeah,
but also
the
like
model was
having,
awesome.
yeah, it was. And, you know, I think it's a real achievement that they took this like speech that probably for a lot of people could be seen as boring. I thought it was pretty fascinating, and some of it, especially some of the specific themes that she was talking about. But then having to not only understand this like vague fantasy story that's woven in with this love story, but then also what he's trying to say in terms of metaphor about like building structure and changing buildings, but not necessarily changing certain aspects of a city. It's a lot of there's a lot of layers to it. So probably a film that would benefit from multiple watchings, but then again, I don't know if this is a film that I would want to necessarily revisit right away again.
Mhm.
But um, I give Petzold a lot of credit because this is the type of artistic film that I think uh, can be really rewarding and obviously makes you think. I mean, we're like talking about the different layers of it right now, and I think we're going to get to a movie in a second that's a little bit less thought provoking. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What he's going for here for sure.
I gotta say, it doesn't it feel like one day, Franz Rogowski, he's gonna pop up in some like
Yeah,
big time like auteur driven film. Like he was in Malik's last movie, Hidden Life, but like maybe
he'll like
someone
show
who's a
up in a
little
Nolan film as
yeah,
like
maybe someone who's a little more mainstream at this point. Like even Quentin Tarantino, right? Like Quentin
yeah.
Tarantino, he's seen every Petzold movie and he fucking loves it. And I'm sure he's been on the Rogowski train for a while, right? So I'm sure we'll see him in Hollywood eventually. So that'd
Mhm.
be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Why don't we move on to Guy Ritchie's most recent film, Wrath of Man, which Dave, we've been talking about Guy Ritchie for as much as we've been able to talk about pretty much any director recently. We had Aladdin 2019,
Hmm.
we had The Gentleman in early 2020, one of the last films I saw in theaters before the pandemic.
Right.
Um, and Wrath of Man's coming out. He's making another film that's already in production.
Yeah.
I
Five
think
Eyes.
think you also reviewed King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, early on.
Yeah, I didn't see it till late. I saw it on the plane, so I think I mentioned it at one point. But yeah, he's released a few movies since we've started the pod, and
He's working.
obviously one of those is quite notable in how it is an outlier. That would be, of course, working for Disney and making Aladdin,
Mhm.
which to me is probably my favorite of live action remakes. More on that in a little bit with Cruella, but since he got back to his usual ways with the gentleman and Wrath of Man, you almost can tell that Guy Ritchie's like happy to like take back the narrative and like do his stuff again,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
which is fun.
Yeah, and I think this movie is really like it's Guy Ritchie, but a little bit more like Tom Clancy-ish, I guess, like
Hmm.
in a sense. The Gentleman felt like Guy Ritchie going all the way to like you know witty Bond esque type side, where he's
Right.
you have Matthew McConaughey and he's had all these weird lines and talk about tigers and all this shit. You have Hugh Grant being super weird, and it's
Hmm.
like, okay, this is campy, but like in like the most fun way possible. This feels a little bit almost like video game-ish at times, like
Hmm.
that whole beginning sequence when Jason Statham has just been accepted after barely passing the physical test, and they're like walking him through that like place, and he has to stop by each person and talk to them and introduce himself, and they give him some like witty jab like, oh, you think you're fucking Jesus or some shit. Okay,
Yeah.
going on here. But yeah, no, I thought this was actually really fun, like, and I think when it leads into the action and stuff, I'm like, oh, this is a fun Guy Ritchie film. This is what it is kind of, but I didn't really think it was like his best movie. What did you think though?
No, I think that's the funny thing too is it takes some DNA from his best movie,
Mhm.
Snatch, namely the
Yeah.
non-linearity of it. Like halfway, maybe a third of the way through the movie, we completely restart and we get the complete other POV of the bad guys from Statham's point of view, right?
Mhm.
The other gang, and like you learn that the whole pretext of this movie is that at the end of the day, two rival bank, not even rival, two separate bank robbing gangs happen to be casing the same truck route.
Mhm.
Like it's kind of preposterous,
Yeah.
but I still find the movie pretty fun. I think like early on the way it's like framed, like that when you get the first view of the inciting incident of that robbery where Statham's son gets killed, it's
Mhm.
filmed from like inside the back of the Fortico bank truck, and it's kind of incoherent. You can't really see much outside like the doors and stuff.
Yep.
And I think it was a cool way to like keep the suspense and not tell us everything that happened because the movie wants to be more convoluted and tell you that later on. So uh, I don't know how effective all that nonlinearity is. Like I actually really was expecting like Statham's rest of his crew to show up at some point again. It's
Yep.
kind of surprised they never appeared because we got a lot of time with them like
Yep.
in their big scene. But the action is fun and like banter wise, I don't think this banter isn't as good as the gentleman. I don't think it's even close. Honestly, like there's a lot of like I don't mind like the toxic masculinity of Fornica. Like there's some like really like out there like comments, but I think it's just kind of dumb. Like at times, like
Did you
Statham
have a
tells Post
favorite line?
Malone like suck his own
Oh
dick
yeah.
before he shoots him in the head. Right? It's like the
What?
script is what it is. That's fine, but you're
What
there to
did you
watch.
say? Suck your own dick. Okay. Sure. My
You're
favorite line was uh I forgot exactly what's happening in the scene, but he like does something and one of the guys like, what do I do now? He's like, I don't give a fuck what you do. I was like, okay. Like, sure. I
I
feel
mean,
that.
Josh Hartnett's character is called Boy Sweat Dave.
Yeah. Really funny. Also, shout out Josh Hartnett, a guy who I think after Lucky Number 11, I was like, this guy's gonna be everywhere. And didn't really turn out that way, but
No,
I
he's
still like him
working
as an
more
actor.
lately though, which is
Yeah,
nice.
it's nice. Um yeah, Holt McCallany, who
Hmm.
obviously we know from Mindhunter, gets kind of a nice turn in this movie.
Yeah.
I felt like pretty predictable because you have him and he's kind of like second build on this, so you're
Yes.
like, oh, is he just gonna be like the straightforward old man like, caretaker
Yeah.
coworker? No, he actually gets a little bit of a twist, which I think is a bit predictable, but also like good for him.
Right.
Glad he got it.
Yeah. Once you get to like the climax, which is this extended set piece at the depot
Ooh,
where there's the robbery attempt and this many
so
shootouts, I was surprised to see how much character death there was. Right. And
yeah.
even Holt's character Bullet, Scott Eastwood fucking claps him at the end there. It was like really quick. I thought there'd be
Hmm.
like a standoff where they like talk to each other and then one of them gets killed. No, like he just fucking gets got real fast. I really like Jeffrey Donovan as the head of the other gang, like the leader. thought he was pretty charismatic there.
I mean, he's
Uh,
always just the guy from Burn Notice, though. Like,
right.
I love that. Jeffrey Donovan just always be Burn Notice.
Meanwhile, you have like on the other side, you have like Andy Garcia as like a FBI agent or whoever it is who's might have done this work in like 2 days. Like he has just a handful of scenes where he says basically nothing, and like that's what I was saying. Like there's some like convolutedness to it. Like heck, like
Yeah,
you remember the Andy Garcia's like deputies, like his agents that he's like telling to stand down. They never come up again. Like why were they
never.
even characters in the first place?
I know. Well, they were like, well, there's this workplace shooting, so they obviously need to investigate it. And then they're like, this guy is the guy we're looking for. He's like, nah, just let him go. We have similar interests. Okay, cool. Andy Garcia just showing up for 2 seconds and then showing up for two
Hmm.
seconds again. That's it.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like some of it, but really worked for me. Also, Rob Delaney just shows up randomly
Yeah.
and it's like being a ridiculous, like funny person, and then checks back out. Like as you mentioned, Post Malone just shows up for a second. It's all just like, okay, okay. Like
Right, right.
I'm enjoying myself. It's fine.
Also funny to see like this like incredibly militarized security outfit.
Yes.
Like these are people that move like money around, but like bring this is not how that's not how strapped up Brinks truck dudes are. Like they do not have like that level of machine guns at the home
Nowadays,
base, you know.
they're not like Call of Duty soldiers like walking around. It's fucking
Fucking
nuts.
like the Holger or whatever gun that is. Like they that was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I like the action at the end. Like again, like a lot of people die like kind of in quick ways. Like a lot of unceremoniously. Like that character is gone now. Bye. You
Hmm.
know. So and
But you know,
Statham, I think Statham obviously he's our lead character. Like he's doing Jason Statham things. He's not doing anything you haven't seen him do before. But he still really knows how to command the screen. I think the thing with Statham is the rest of the movie around him needs to be good because he's been in a lot
mhm.
of movies like this that are really bad, right?
Yep.
But like it's never really Statham's fault. So I think he's kind of he'll be up and down with the rest of the movie, but he'll always bring what he brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, you know, I felt like Scott Eastwood actually in this. Like I liked him. Like he really seemed like a good bad guy. I was like, you're hateable, and the ending between him and Statham is a little bit like ridiculous, and that's like a Guy Ritchie like ridiculous ending where this guy's holding a gun on him, and he's like, "What the fuck do you want?" And then he's like, it's like, okay, dude, like maybe you want to
Right?
get strapped up too. Also, then he's like, "I want your lungs and I want your liver," and
Your spleen.
yeah, I was like, all right, like, good
Yeah,
ending.
I agree. It's a nice turn for Scotty. So I haven't had like a high opinion of him the
Me
past
neither.
few years. I feel like most people don't. You know, it's like he's just kind of like, oh, here's the new pretty white dude that we're gonna try and make a movie star. You know, but like this actually him getting a little dirty. You know, as
Yeah.
the bad guy here. You know, got a messed up eye as this character. Like
Mhm.
it's a good use, I think, of his talents. You know, because he like the physicality still worked. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was nice for him.
Totally agree. You ready to wrap this one up and move on?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Five Eyes,
Yeah.
which is in production now, and we'll probably get, I imagine, maybe early next year. A lot of frequent collaborators, some recent Guy Ritchie works, including Jason Statham again. So I'm just happy to see a guy. I think he's found a nice niche again. Like he knows what kind of budget he can get for these kind of movies, and he's running with it, and that's awesome. So
Mhm.
happy to continue to watch what he does.
Well, Dave, we're moving on to Disney now because we have Cruella, the Emma Stone production, Emma Stone film, reviving everyone's most hated fashion designer, Cruella Deville. This was a movie that was supposed to come out Christmas time 2020. Obviously, with COVID, Disney was not going to have their bag impacted, at least not for this one. When you get Emma Stone attached to this and Emma Thompson, I think they wanted to try to get a little more return on investment, so they dropped it May 28th of this year. So we're talking about this a little bit later than we typically would for a film of this hype. But Cruella. I mean, I guess first of all, was this a movie you felt like you needed? It's like, oh, I need to know the Cruella prequel story.
Well, no, but that's the answer for all of the Disney live action remakes, right?
Good point. At least this
So,
one's original.
yeah, this one's completely original and it doesn't change anything. I don't know. Like, it doesn't change any calculus for me one way or the other. So the fact that it's like an attempt to do something different and really tread a lot of new ground, I respect. Versus something that's like a traditional remake, like the Lion King remake, right? Not technically live action, it's photorealistic, but that, for all intents and purposes, tried to be a beat for beat remake of Lion King with a few
Yeah.
exceptions. And that's the seventh highest grossing movie of all time. Obviously, it was a great call by Disney. But creatively, I thought that was about as bankrupt as these get.
Yeah.
Cruella, um, I guess the decision to rebrand Cruella de Vil, at least in her early years, as more of an anti-hero than a villain, maybe that can raise an eyebrow or two. But I think it's cool to see something a little out there like this, at least.
Yeah. I think I think they're trying some stuff and going for it. You have Craig Gillespie as the director of this, and I think like
Titania's his last
yeah,
film.
I think you can see some of that like DNA, right? Where um, I think there's some moments that feel a little bit like almost like I'm going with the word campy, I guess today, but it feels like it's just kind of like a little like too much, a little over the top. Obviously, this is based off a cartoon, so some of that's going to happen. Um, but it all kind of works. But at the same time, I felt like so many aspects of this movie didn't work, and um, it's very long. It's two
Mm.
hours, 10 minutes, and I got halfway through, and I was like, "How is there still an hour and 10 left of this?" I have no idea how they have that much more story to tell. There's a lot of plot. Obviously, it covers Corella's rise from orphanhood, or I guess Estella, her rise from
Yes. Yeah.
orphanhood into becoming Cruella de Vil, as gets into the fashion world with the Baroness, who's
Yep.
there's a twist there. There's just a lot going on, and then you just have like this crazy soundtrack. Like I guess Cruella de Vil is just like also like in the London music scene in the '70s and like pushing forward like popular music is kind of crazy. I don't know. There's just a lot going on in
Right.
this movie.
Soundtrack definitely stands out just because there's a lot of needle drops, a ton. And
Almost like a
also,
distracting amount.
yeah, I thought it was funny that you get covers from Tina Turner of Whole Lot of Love and Come Together. I was like, we specifically picked the covers for these. Maybe was that a cost saving
Had to be.
method? You don't want to pay the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. We'll get the covers instead. Like, not sure. That stood out to me. But yeah, there's a lot of needle drops, right?
Yep.
Which is funny because isn't the score Nicholas Bertel? Like,
Pretty sure that's
yeah,
right. Hold on me.
like it's
Uh,
I think that the score itself is composed well. Yeah, it is Bertel.
yeah.
But you have all these other like distracting almost needle drops because like anytime there's not dialogue, there's a ton of music going on.
hmm Yeah, it's a very loud movie, and obviously that's kind of what they're kind of trying to characterize Cruella as is this like rambunctious orphan who had to take care of herself, and she's turning all these plots and or turning all these tricks and not in that sense, but like obviously like just to like get by, and it's a very I don't know. It's just a lot. Is where I'm going. I think Emma Stone's pretty good actually, and I always like her. I think her and Emma Thompson have like a good rapport with each other. Um, I think it's interesting the way, like you said, that they kind of frame her as like a dog lover in this movie, and like actually working really well with the dogs. And it's like, huh, okay. Um, I don't know. My thoughts aren't fully formed on this because I think there's just a lot to wrap my head around. What did you like or what didn't you like about the film? Let me go to start there.
Uh, yeah. So I like Stone. I thought Stone was pretty good. I think she at the end of the day she kind of has to just roll with the script. It's hard to elevate this kind of material. I think because there's a lot of, as you said, a lot of plot and a lot of movement, but I think it works because like and her performance works because like you get a lot of lavish costume design and lots of different hairstyles and stuff. Like that's kind of fun. Like for a little bit, this movie is almost like the Devil Wears Prada. I think that's
Right.
probably the biggest flaw with the film is that it jumps around a lot. As you said, it's long, but there's like a lot of like distinct segments of the
Hmm.
film, it takes about halfway before we get like the Cruella persona really even manifesting, right?
Hmm.
But I like the rivalry between Cruella and the Baroness and like the cat and
Yeah.
mouse stuff. I thought that stuff was really fun. One other thing that I noticed was, and I believe this was shot pre-COVID for the, or at least most of it was. It seemed to have a lot of like like minimal set design, right? Like you have
Hmm.
the home apartment, the Baroness's like studio office, and her home, and that's like it for like
That's
and
it.
the water fountain. Like that's like it for like sets, right? Like I don't
Hmm.
know why that stood out to me, but it did.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's definitely like a weird aspect of it, but I don't know if it like detracts in any way. I really like the interplay between her and her henchman there with Jasper and that guy's name. Can't
Paul
remember.
Walter
Paul
Hauser's
Walter
character,
Hauser.
yeah,
Yeah. Which I also was just like, they got so many people to hop in and just play like a bit role in this. Paul Walter Hauser, who I can't remember if he actually got the nomination for Richard Jewell, but was certainly in the conversation
yeah,
as
he
like a
didn't,
best
but
actor. Um, you have Mark Strong basically playing like a version of um his character of oh man, blanking on the
being
name
like
again.
Kingsman,
Yes, Kingsman. Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
he's just like the same guy, kind of.
Yeah, when I was
Joel.
watching it, I was like,
Yeah,
something has to flip because Mark Strong is not in this movie to just be the butler
no, no way. And
or the
obviously,
assistant,
you read
whatever he
that
was.
right. Yeah, even Joel Fry has been getting like quite a few parts recently. I thought that
Yeah,
was
Game of
like
Thrones zone.
nice. Um, it wasn't one of the guys from Kayvon Novak was also in this. Just like a very like quick part, I think. Yeah, he was the lawyer, but
Oh,
obviously
oh,
we know
I
him.
didn't recognize him. That's funny.
Yeah, but um, we're big fans of him, obviously. So it's just like there's a lot of talent around this, and I think overall, especially for like the Disney live action, like you mentioned, um, pretty good. Like I think this is probably one of the best ones, maybe top three. Would you say? I mean, you mentioned
Yeah,
that you think Aladdin is number one, right?
yeah. Aladdin's, I think, still my top one. Um, yeah, think of the ones we've talked about, and there are others in these, but you have Cruella, Mulan, Lion King, Aladdin, Dumbo, Beauty and the Beast, and Jungle Book. Probably the most
Mhm.
notable of them. And again, there's a few others.
Jungle Book's pretty
Um,
good.
yeah, I would have Aladdin, Cruella, Beauty and the Beast, and Jungle Book. I think it's a pretty easy top tier. And
Yeah.
I think Aladdin for me was just the most entertaining. I think Mena Massoud as Aladdin was really winning. And yeah, heck, despite a lot of people's initial fears, Will Smith's genie was really great too. So that was one where I actually really appreciated the changes they made to the storytelling. Right, Cruella, being that it's completely original, really has nothing to adapt for the most
Hmm.
part as a prequel. Um, almost has like attempts to have higher ambition. Like I said, like there's some like fashion drama angles to this, right? Like there's a lot of like parts to this film. Um, but yeah, I would say like especially if it wasn't as long, like it could be the best one, but still solid for, again for what you get, like all the caveats aside for these kind of movies.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think I see kids really liking this movie. Um, so I yeah, they definitely set it up for a
Hmm.
sequel with the after credits scene. So
Yep, and they have already
announce that.
announced ones in
Yeah.
development. Next up on the remakes, let's talk. What do you think you're most excited for out of all these? We have The Little Mermaid, which I believe is the most recent one because that's been filming. We also have Peter Pan and Wendy from David Lowery, and it looks like Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio is picking up as well. Gonna shoot relatively soon. Tom Hanks as Geppetto. Those
I'd
seem
say
to be the
that's the
three that are
one.
closest to getting made.
Yeah, I think that's the one I am least excited for. I probably Little Mermaid, especially because obviously they went with Halle Bailey
Yeah,
as Ariel, which will be
definitely.
an interesting twist. And the music in Little Mermaid just awesome. So
Mhm. Yeah, Melissa
that's probably it for
McCarthy as
me.
Ursula, Bardem
Yeah,
as the dad. Yeah, I'm into
great
that one.
cast. Yeah, is
The
that the
one
one you're
I'm
most
not
excited
into,
for?
the one I'm not into is The Lion King 2 because it's being made by Barry Jenkins, and I just am really annoyed that Barry Jenkins has to follow up Underground Railroad with The Lion King 2. an indictment on Hollywood. Like
Maybe
he's
he'll
getting
just.
paid. This is an easy way for him to get paid. I totally understand. And
I like
maybe
Barry
he'll
Jenkins
elevate
getting the
it, but
bag.
like it's the Lion King, dude. Like we don't need this.
Yeah, just quick with we've mentioned this before, but going back to Little Mermaid, David Diggs as Sebastian and Aquafina as Scuttle. So very talented voice cast. But yeah,
Yeah. That's 2022 date, I believe.
yeah, Barry Jenkins. I mean, I don't blame him for getting the bag. I would love to see him just go with a really brutal, long shot of like some animal just like getting ripped apart. Just really make it
Mm,
like the Underground Railroad, but Disney.
imagine.
Yeah,
Uh,
it would be really funny. But
we
um,
also recently got word that John Chu is attached to a Lilo and Stitch movie, and
nice.
I believe they're also trying to rev up Robin Hood. The
Okay,
animated Robin Hood remake. So,
I'm down with
Ro-
that.
yeah, and that'd be interesting, right? Because we get so much Robin Hood, right? It's one of those like I think copyrightless IPs at this point. So there's been many Robin Hood movies over the years, up and down to say the least. But the Disney one, right? The cartoon, the Fox, the animals. Maybe that's right for something. I don't know. I mean, they were talking about a Bambi one a few years
Uh,
back when Lion King came out.
do not need
I think
Bambi.
we got to stop with the photorealistic animals, if you ask me. But also, like Dumbo wasn't that good, but also was the lowest box office of all these remakes.
Mhm.
Pinocchio, Bambi. Maybe there's just not an appetite for the stuff from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I was
Then
thinking
again,
like,
Beauty and the Beast was a big hit, so
yeah,
maybe it really is up. It depends what it is. I don't know.
feels like Snow White should be tapped soon, right? But like, maybe they're
When
just
we were
not
talking
going to
about Beauty
touch
and the
that
Beast is
one.
a '90s movie. I was thinking of Snow White is an old one.
That's
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Snow, but maybe with the dwarves, they want to avoid that. I don't really know. I
right.
don't know.
Oh, well,
It,
actually, well, they kind of skipped that, right? Because they made Maleficent one and
yeah,
two. So
they went with the Cruella route, where they're like, we're gonna go with the.
yeah,
Um, and honestly, I don't need to see Cruella running around trying to kill dogs. Like, I just don't need that. Like, stick with this like anti-hero thing. I'm fine with that, but I really don't need to have 101 Dalmatians remade, in my opinion. Especially if they're all going to be animated like the dogs were in this. It's just like a lot. It's a lot of animation.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, the ones we just mentioned, most of these for them are more of a straightforward variety. So
Yeah.
we'll see. They're gonna keep making these because they keep making a shit ton of money. Like three of them are $1 billion movies. Like I said, Lion King is a top 10 grosser ever. So these print, and that's why they're
Yep.
making them. Is what it is.
Well, Dave, I think we've reached the end of our Cruella discussion. What do we got for next week?
A lot of cool stuff for next week. We got obviously the premiere of Loki this Wednesday on Disney
I hear
Plus.
that's great, by the way.
Yeah,
All the early reviews are
definitely
good.
exciting show. As soon as we saw that first trailer and understood what it was, Marvel TV's back, whether you like it or not. It'll be back more often than not. Just got to get used to that
Hmm.
feeling. On Friday, In the Heights film adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's first hit musical is hitting HBO Max. Also rapturously received. We got The Migos Culture 3 at the last this Friday. Polo G's second album, Hall of Fame, this Friday. Also this Friday, the return of Betty season 2. And we'll also wrap up and talk about HBO Max's Hacks, starring Gene Smart. A unexpected but welcome surprise as far as the TV calendar's gone this year. So a lot of good stuff coming up.
For sure. So hit that subscribe button, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, and check the show notes and follow our Nostalgia Best of 2021 playlist, 2021 playlist, where we're going to have a song from XO on there. So we'll see you all next week.